I guess I need to flip
It's
the
good to
chair.
see everyone. I've missed few of
Yeah.
these meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
it's been a long time. Last time you joined the session, Kazi, as well.
I know. I struggled. Let's put it like that. It was difficult, but I hope it
Yeah.
will get easier this year. So
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, we keep getting tested here.
oh yes, that's one way to put it. Yes, indeed, indeed.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, there's an approach. It's definitely not new. It's a very, very old approach, but I was reading a book. I can't remember the name of it. He's written a lot on Stoicism, but it's interesting. The book is the ideas are great. It's one of those books where you read the whole book, you go, that's a good book. That probably could have been a quarter of the length, but okay, it's.
Mhm.
But anyways, it's the idea of thinking like a Stoic, and the
Okay.
idea is that if you can, and I've tried this, and I'm surprised how well it works. Is basically the idea is that you try and encounter problems that come up in life and just go, I'm just being tested by the Stoic gods. Now, you don't have to believe in whether there's a gods or anything like that, but you just sort of sit there. And if you can give yourself 5 seconds, like within 5 seconds of something happening, and just say, this is a test, it is remarkable how much that can dial down your anxiety and stuff momentarily. I mean, it doesn't solve for everything, but
You should have told me that like 3 weeks ago
oh,
when I got sick. I should
oh
have
no.
told myself this is a test.
Yeah, but you probably panic saying, "Oh my God, someone tries to grade me."
Well, yeah. I mean, you're the only one that knows whether or not you passed or failed. But I,
Mm,
I I find that to be as somebody who gets who I find I think I'm relatively calm in the face of big catastrophes, but gets maybe a little bit too upset at things like the printer not working, technology not working, some other things like scheduling problems and stuff like that. I have to keep telling myself this is just a test. This is just a
mm.
test. And I've tried it, and I'm surprised how well it works for small things.
I will try that, Cameron, for sure. Starting today. Anything that upsets me, I will go at a test.
I'll observe you. I'll let you know if you're doing it well.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. How for all of you? I mean, how was your holidays? Did you get a holiday? Did you get a break and whatever that might mean for you?
I didn't because I got sick with COVID. So just from 15th of December, I've been really sick. But finally, I'm feeling better. So
Good.
my holidays were kind of miserable a bit.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Unfortunately, you're in very large company. I guess that's why we're in the situation we're in. But oh, it's so I'm glad you're feeling better, and the symptoms are are they gone or are they just still lingering a little bit?
No, no, no. Well, almost gone, let's say.
Okay,
But I'm like 85% there. So that's good.
great. Oh wait, I guess I'll use one of these
Yeah. Yes, thanks.
things. Actually, Kevin's got the right one, the celebration. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Mark. Happy New Year.
Hi,
Greetings,
Mark.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. As a friend of mine said on Twitter earlier today, avoiding COVID is my new Squid Game.
Oh, yeah. Where do I begin?
Yeah, no,
Ah.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
We can't hear you, John. I think you're
Yeah.
saying something, but it's just.
Yeah, definitely there's something with Kumo Space and John's mic.
How about that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah?
We can hear you
Okay,
well.
great.
Yeah.
I thought everyone was ignoring me as usual.
Yeah, we totally do.
I'm too much trouble, so just ignore John. I was going to say, I had the opposite problem. My daughters are here. They both got COVID, and I desperately tried to catch COVID from them, but it didn't work. I even had some symptoms and stuff, or similar symptoms, but I didn't get COVID. So I'm really quite desperate to catch it. I don't know how you catch it. I mean, one
John,
daughter is still downstairs.
I'd have to say that the odds are pretty good. If you really work hard enough, you'll find a way to get it.
It's been 2 weeks, and she's downstairs, and she still tests positive, and I'm eating dinner with her and in the same room and everything.
Huh.
Consider yourself lucky.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand, Krasi, that it's not pleasant, but it's one of those things where I want to get it over and done with, and the holidays is a good time, I guess, in a way, because it will probably impact me less if I do it now.
Mm.
Yeah. What a gift to bring at the dinner party. Yeah.
But I hope everybody had a good rest, even Krasi, if you were ill, it certainly you must have had a break from your
Oh,
normal
yeah.
routine.
I did. I experienced for the first time this. I was telling Diana, I feel stupid. I don't know how to explain it, but my brain just stopped functioning for whatever reason. So
Mm.
I had to stop because there was nothing I can do. So.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, my college roommate ended up in hospital, and it's 8 months later now, and he still hasn't recovered. So the idea of kind of like, I'll get it, and then at least I can get it over with, I think it's a risky policy. So
Well, the thing is, we are all going to get it. You can't keep away from it. This is my point. If we could keep away from it, I've done pretty well. But everyone in the world will eventually catch it. It's like flu. It'll become normal. It's just, it's just that thing.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thoughts are, while that might be the case because of just the way it, evolves and stuff, I would much rather that be on the about 6th or 7th additional iteration in the past once it's much more benign and like all the other COVID, which is effectively like the common cold. I'd rather get that one than these newer ones simply because right now it is from a design standpoint, this is a pretty slick bug. If you think about it, like, I mean, not the. Now, let me just clarify. I'm not wishing it got worse, but think about this. If you were going to create like almost like a perfect virus, create something that allows it to travel really well, has completely inconsistent symptoms, which means that you sow doubt in people, which means it's easier to spread. And those symptoms, most of them are invisible, and the effects are not distributed evenly across. Well, it definitely affects certain populations than others. It affects them also individually as well as collectively. So you're constantly going, like if we all ended up getting something where it just like, I don't know, turned our skin red or something like that, we could all go, ha, okay, that's. But the fact that Krasi, you had it, I could get it and have something completely different. Like Mark, your friend has had it for like it's incredible.
Yeah, well, all his wife, his entire family had it. They got it from their son who got it at school. So this whole thing that kids at school can't like contract and pass it on is that's bogus. Kids can pass it on. Just they're super spreaders like everybody else. His wife lost all her hair, even though she wasn't that sick.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Like imagine this. Like there are people out there who are getting this that are having virtually no symptoms and will have no ill effects, and they may pass it on to somebody who has very few effects, but loses all their hair,
Yeah.
who passes it on to somebody who goes into ICO and passes away. I mean, it's incredible. It's a fascinating virus.
And the other thing that they have proven now in a really weird study, which is I find really hilarious. It's not funny, and none of this is really funny, but it's just this weird kind of coincidence, is that people who are COVID deniers on average have worse symptoms than those who are not. Which is just a fascinating kind of like COVID doesn't care kind of thing, right? First of all, who came up with the idea and who funded the study is fascinating to me, right? But the idea that was the actual outcome, and like this is I read it was like in the New York Times or something like that, like the last couple of days. There's a large sample size. So
Yeah.
Strategy makes sense to accept COVID, have mild symptoms.
That's right. Yeah.
I like what Cameron said, that this is the perfect design. Whoever came up with it, yeah.
Well,
really good job.
But this is a kind of like a survival of the fittest thing, right? Like the versions of this thing that spreads the most easily, that remains asymptomatic so that you don't know that you're sick when you're passing it on. That's a key part of it too, right? If everybody got sick right away, people, it wouldn't be as efficient. So it's, so the things that work, and now there's a new one that has like way more mutations that's come out of like further north in Africa, right? And the fact that it'll never, John's right, it'll become endemic. It'll never go away because cats can catch it, and nobody's going to be vaccinating their cats. So, like, just as an example, right? It'll be, but tigers died in zoos. Like, tigers actually died of COVID. It's crazy.
And I find it really interesting because this argument about
what's
the
2022 going to hold for this group, do you think? This
Sorry?
is what I was thinking. What 2022, this year, what is it going to hold? What is it going to be like for this group? Does anybody have any ideas that we want to do anything different or change anything? Are we going to carry on as we are? Or I wondered if anyone had thought while they were at home celebrating or whatever. I guess that's a no.
Careful what you click. you fall off the couch if you're not careful.
Yeah.
I've done that too. I try to avoid clicking on too many things because I always go, oh yeah, that's not how you do this.
Too much wine.
Yeah. I do think, Kevin, we talked about like trying to make it more of a testing ground for ideas, right? That's one of the things that I think is good. I think it's a safe space for trying things. And I don't know, it feels like the world is in need of some radical ideas. And things like design thinking don't lead to radical ideas, right? And so having space for some kind of more radical ideas might be interesting, at least as like a testing ground to start them.
It is.
I don't know. What's that?
I've been doing one of the things I've been doing is catching up on reading. And one of the things that I've been reading about is Banathi, who is the guy that developed the double diamond model. His book, one of his books, and I'm reading the sort of the modern history of transformational change, real change, change that's different to what it was before, and it really started in the 1970s. And there've been organizations in the last century that are large organizations that have done this. And there've always been organizations that have been doing this. This isn't actually new. And the history that he shows is just the development through various people like Ackoff and people like that. And also Deming. These people are all dead, passed away, and so is Banathi. But what's interesting is that I'm reading his stuff from 1996, and it could be written by someone today about how we are experiencing complexity, change, blah, 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 blah. And I was reflecting that so many of us are attempting to reinvent this, actually. I don't mean us in this group. I mean, there are people out there going, this is new, we have to do something, that we haven't done before. And I'm going, now hang on a minute. I mean, I've been doing this in 2003, and other people have been doing it from the 1960s and other times, and it's always been there under the radar. The thing that I'm trying to do, I think, in my writing is to try and help service designers and people like that, to help them to see that we can, what is known as, stand on the shoulders of giants. We don't have to begin at zero. We can begin where they have left off. The problem with that is that their work is, it's not exactly out there. It's not in a 5-minute YouTube format. I can't find anything online with regard to Banathi. It's only in his books, as an example. But it's what's bizarre is that when the Design Council took the double diamond from his work and made it their own, they stripped out all this stuff that actually now they need to put back in. They stripped out the systems thinking. So the original double diamond was designed to integrate design thinking and systems thinking. That's what his book is about, for social contexts. And the Design Council are now just getting around to trying to do that, and they haven't done it particularly well. They haven't done it in a way that really engages with people, and there are no real examples that they can produce that go, here is an example of, this is where we've done it, so we can try and build on that. So
and when they do so, when they provide examples without any evidence for the success that they are claiming for. So it's kind of, I'm mixed about the last iteration of the Design Council framework.
The net zero one, Kevin.
Sorry?
The one that they called net zero.
Yes. I find it kind of like it's, well, if you read about system thinking and complexity thinking and stuff like that, it's kind of nothing is new in there. And at the same time, they achieved something that I find it not a shame, but it's kind of, it's a bit a shame that I don't feel like it's powerful enough for people to actually know how to start. It's like it's reduced to something, but it's not actionable in some way. And the fact that they focus so much on, characterizing someone who is able to achieve system design level stuff is misleading to me, because they at the same time they are preaching for teamwork and intersectional type of work, or multidisciplinary type of work. And at the same time, they are trying to characterize criteria for a leader, a criteria for someone who is more like this, and criteria for someone that is more like that. And I find it's like, the discussion about personas. It's kind of misleading. We don't care about the characteristics of one individual in this kind of context. It's not the point, right? We are more like focusing on how we interact with the others to enable certain type of outcomes. And so I do feel like I understand why they are trying to do that and what they try to achieve with it, but I find it really misleading and not actionable at all. So there are people, just taking the net zero document and say, yeah, see, system thinking, design thinking, blah blah blah, and I don't see something actionable, as easy to take and make it your own as it is for just a double diamond, for instance, which is really easy to understand and interpret and try to act upon it, which is not the case here. But it's the fact is that it's yeah, it's a complex topic, so it's hard to find a good way to simplify it enough for it to be actionable. But my opinion, they should have gone for something more in the idea of the of metaphor and principles than what they did. I don't feel it's I personally don't feel it's good. Yeah.
You can't commercialize that, right? Like, this is the problem. This is in a way, in terms of like thinking problems, this is a map is not the territory kind of concept, right? Like, where you basically have to make it really simple and consumable so that you can sell it, but it's not an accurate depiction of the actual thing that happens in fact, because design is practiced in the particular, not in the universal. Right. And so you have that. And there's also like how do you explain magic to somebody, right? Like, that kind of thing. How do you, so there is there that, I think that's the problem with it, is that in being easily consumable, it lacks the nuance that is hard to describe, simply because actually like trying to describe the nuance would make it a less effective, what is it, like a less effective framework in a kind of a weird way. The thing that makes it like digestible as a framework is the thing that keeps it from being a useful framework.
Yeah.
Right.
Mark, I think you're absolutely right on with that one. I think, like, to me, I think we get trapped all the time. I'm speaking humans. We get trapped by the framework, because you're right. You have to make it simple enough that it's digestible enough. But we keep forgetting it's that whole thing around the, I always like the kind of the Buddhist quote of, don't confuse the finger pointing to the moon for the moon itself. And we kind of get into this whole thing. It's like, oh, we got a framework. Now we can solve everything. It's like, well, yeah, but it's just a framework. It's just a means of thinking. But it's a guide. It's a guide. And John, actually, this is sort of fitting. What you and I had your comment, and we're commenting on Danielle's point around the idea that these texts and stuff aren't very useful in their own, and yet they get people excited. They're sexy, they're fun, they're colorful. Like, everybody's got a book, I got a framework, and it gives you the illusion that you're solving things and you're doing stuff, and yet you're doing nothing. And yet you put that into practice and go, oh yeah, this is a bit of a guide rail for me. It's like being able to help me avoid getting into the weeds. It's helping frame some of my thinking. All of a sudden you're like, oh, this is really useful. But the work itself is the mess. That's the sticky stuff that doesn't go into the lines. Like, that's where the coloring outside the lines, where you got to go. It's these frameworks give the guide rails. So I think that's how I view it. But it's so easy. We just get trapped into this whole thing where it's like, well, according to the framework. And it's funny. And it just as another note, I was just thinking about it. I was writing on something, and on some of these theories of change and stuff like that have been done all over the place. Almost nobody uses them according to like they get taught, as in you have to do it, you have to be have fidelity to the method. And yet when you actually look at the research, nobody ever used the method as it was exactly prescribed, because they can't. It's too difficult.
I think you've upset John.
Yeah. Well, so it's something that is, I feel like it's one of the flaws of today's, but I think we already had this discussion many times, but it's one of the flaws of today's, I feel, wrong focus on methods as if they were absolutes. And clearly they miss the fact that we need to adapt the way we work to the context we are trying to achieve changes. And I mean, you don't need, and this is where I do feel like we might need at some point to escape this kind of language around system thinking and complexity thinking and blah blah blah. It's like we don't need them to express it in a simple way. I just did there. They're saying that context is more important than the method. You need to understand the context, and then if you have a good enough understanding also of the method, what the method is trying to help you achieve, then it's not hard to see how you can adapt it to fit the context and give you the result you want to get, right? I don't feel like it's hard to understand, but it's true that we like to appeal to like the framework, as you said, or the method, as if they were absolutes. And yeah, and the discussion right now around system thinking, I do feel like they are stuck in in terminologies that we don't need them to do things. So, but it's the same with design. We don't need some of the terms we are using to do things. So it doesn't mean that you don't need to understand what they mean, but this is where there's a difference. So most people are coming from, and this is because the certification stuff also is the business around certifications is I do feel is doing more harm.
I get
Sorry?
more passionate about the certification than the work from the design council, because to be honest, I actually enjoyed the read. I know that perhaps it requires certain level of familiarity to make something out of it, but I didn't have the feeling that I don't know what to do with it. So at least that's what I remember after reading the work that they posted. And some of these concepts and the departures from the traditional, trying to bring a little bit the longer term perspective, perhaps if it's advocated from an institution like them, maybe it would begin to resonate more, because I think that they do have this responsibility to drive change. And
You mean that the design council has that responsibility?
I think so. I mean, it's difficult if the change happens on a. Of course, it can happen from bottom up, and many companies can begin to push that. But I think it will be also good if some of this message comes from an institution like them. I don't know.
I was thinking about that too, and I'm thinking about this double. I'm just looking at it right now, and I mean, I'm familiar with the design council kind of generally from years ago, but I know we did a proposal in early December for a client that we're working with now, and I laid out a process that we were going to go through and a methodology that we were going to go through that I know is bullshit, but I know that they have to understand it, right? Like I understand that it's not linear in that way, right? That this is going to be recursive and it's going to loop back on itself, but I need to lay it out like some kind of linear process so that they have some kind of insight into the actual process itself. But I use it as a method to simplify something and communicate the general flow of the process to a client, as opposed to being an actual reflection of what it is that we're going to do, right? Because I know that it's going to be messier than that, that some of the information I'm going to get from part of their team is exactly, thanks, Amber. Yeah, it is, because at that point, it's actually considered fertilizer and it's a useful thing. But you use it in a way to engage the client, knowing that these inputs are going to come back to you out of phase, that you're going to learn about something, you're going to, especially in discovery, you're going to find something, you're going to go, hey, have you thought about this? Because it wasn't something you talked about. Like I found out that they, just recently, that they had redone their main navigation, but have no metrics on whether it was successful or not. So now it's like, okay, well, we have to stop, and at least for the 2-week window that we have, we need to measure this compared to what you had before. And what metrics do we have from before to kind of take a look at this? That was not part of the plan, and it's out of phase. But I know that kind of stuff is going to happen. And so, and to get back to the design council, part of their responsibility is to explain what design is to non-designers. Right? Like, and so I think part of that gets back to this notion of the frameworks, right? The frameworks have this kind of, they need to be direct in a way that they lose nuance, in the same way that my proposal was direct in a way that ignored the nuance of what was actually going to happen for the purpose of getting somebody to get their CFO to sign off on the process because there's some kind of method that they can say, well, you know, between A and B, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars and it's going to take Y amount of time, right? So there is a game that we play, I think, that makes our work legible, even though we don't actually play by those rules, right? And I think the design council kind of has to do part of the responsibility that Kazi was talking about, I think, is to play that game as well.
But they go beyond that here. They are crossing a line in a sense that they are going a bit beyond the design discussion, because with the net zero,
because they're being prescriptive, you mean?
So yeah, but this is not necessarily the issue, because it might be good in a sense to be prescriptive for someone to know where to start about anything. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But you know, the report itself it's called Net Zero, and it's an attempt to mix a lot of discussions that I think they have right now in the probably more in the public institution like space around carbon emission, circular economy and stuff like that. So it's they are trying to cover a lot of topics, or at least it's my understanding and my feeling about this report. They try to put like an umbrella framework for a lot of different things that, yes, there are connections between all of those topics. So it sure makes sense to, at some point, to discuss about those. But they are going beyond what we traditionally know them for, like design and the practice of design within, public and large institutions like they are used to work with. So maybe I'm misunderstanding the because it's been like some time now that I read the report, so I don't exactly remember all the details. But yeah, go ahead, John.
I just wanted to welcome Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Happy New Year.
How you doing,
Happy
Jonathan?
New Year, sorry.
We're just we've launched into a discussion about the double diamond, where it came from, systems thinking, and the development of design thinking with systems thinking. So that's kind of what we're in the middle of, and it started off by talking about where the double diamond came from with Banathi, and the fact that everyone seems to have forgotten that. And if they go back to that, actually, we will be rooted back into where this all came from. We would talk about the recent release of the double diamond by the Design Council, and the last discussion was about, just to try and summarize this, should the Design Council be they've developed this model, the new version of it, for non-designers to understand, but also, of course, the Design Council is seen by designers as being the place where they learn about some of the core concepts of design. And I think this is the point that Kevin's trying to make, is that this is also about helping designers to learn more about developments in design. And I must say, I believe that the Design Council could do a hell of a lot more to bring in the original concepts of the double diamond into a lot of service designers are quite young. They have come from different places. Some of them have done a 2-week course of service design, and they've learned how to do customer journeys, and they've joined an agency and learned. The disciplines of going in and doing a degree was actually researching and looking at theories and concepts and writing papers and reading these books. And a lot of the modern ways we learn, and I'm quite guilty of that too, is what's the YouTube video that I can watch that helps me to understand what it is. And on LinkedIn, this is bizarre. I've written a piece about the double diamond, and I failed miserably, but what I have found is that people will read even not the whole damn thing, and they'll put a comment going, well, this and that. What's happened to our understanding of something that's a bit more that's a bit deeper, and we will go to Wikipedia and read the first paragraphs and go back to the LinkedIn and go, I know about this, I'm going to comment on it. I mean, it's so weird. What about the people that really want to learn? How are we going to help them to move on? And actually, the reason I'm asking this is that I'm seeing a lot of the younger designers asking these questions. Sometimes they're not asking them directly, but they are searching for various things about service design. And they're doing that because they want to learn and want to know more. And I know that with systems thinking, it's very difficult to do that, partly because of where systems thinking has come from the academic side and all these wretched groups and people with beards that say things that no one can understand.
Wait a second.
Oh shit! Yeah. Whoops. Except for Mark, of course.
Hi, Jonathan. Jonathan looks like he's got some. He's working on some.
And Jonathan, but you know what I mean. I think there's a new wave of systems thinking that is pushing that aside, and I think going forward really fast. And I'm hoping that will take over. Anyway, I'm going to shut up again.
You know, I'm just scanning through this net zero document, and what occurs to me is that it's a bit at cross purposes here in that it's kind of like, you know how in business school very often they choose the case studies to prove a very specific point. It doesn't feel like genuine research in this case, and I feel like there would be a fantastic opportunity for the design council to actually do research, you know, and so to me that's the part that's the most disappointing, like scrolling through here, is that they probably have the reach and the access and the brand to be able to do that, right? Like it just feels like it's, I don't know. I would like to see them to actually do that, like rather than like to be less opinionated about it and try to prove less and just be more like honestly doing research, which is I think something, and I read about this recently, is like, and I think it's a valid critique of design as a whole and design thinking specifically, in that, you know, this whole kind of get out of the building and know your audience thing. There's an entire like set of people who are qualified to do ethnographic research. And frankly, it's not designers. You know, like that's not what we're trained for. We're trained to, you know, do interviews and that kind of thing. But there are people who are really, really trained to do that kind of research. And you know, that would, yeah. Anyway, that's just.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And when I read it, and saw who contributed towards it, those people aren't people that I know of that have that depth, actually. And I agree with you completely. The design council, by its very nature, should be doing research into this. And I'm actually surprised at the lack of research that they've done, and I don't really understand. From the very beginning, they actually said that they codified the original double diamond, which means that they put it into, they simplified it in terms of codified means put it into a standard thing, with taking out all the awkward bits and all the theory bits behind it. They've put it into that package. They've packaged it. I think they should unpackage it. I think they should be able to unpackage it for people who want to know more. It's not for everybody. It's not going to be for new designers. But unpackage it and go into the depths. That's what I would say. But anyway.
There's even ways to present research that is summarized in a way that even young designers could understand, right? So part of the research problem is that, you know, they're like, well, here, you know, here's my abstract and here's my 40 pages of research and statistics and that kind of thing, and all it really needs at the beginning is some kind of TLDR like paragraph that explains and summarizes what happens, so that people can get into it. You know, because there is, you know, the people with beards and other such researchers do get into brevity is not, and concision, I wouldn't say, is a strong suit for those people. and that's balanced against the idea of thoroughness, but you still need to be able to present the story of what it is that you've learned more than just the actual data, right? And so that's a shortcoming of research stuff. But the fact that these are supposedly designers and have written that one of the things that they are supposed to be able to do is storytelling, they should be able to punch their way out of that paper bag,
Yeah. I don't feel like designers are really good at presenting any kind of, generally speaking, I would say, case study in a, in a sense that just does not highlight what they think the markets want to hear from them, which is, actually telling the story of how, the entire process of how did you decided to use this approach, and how how things emerge during your work, and this kind of thing is usually not well, told, at least, or described, and it's hard to do. It takes time, and this is where it's the the issue lies. Is it takes time to do it well, and people who want to have like a nice portfolio of case studies, they don't want to take all this time, because it's really like a big work to do it. So the easiest way to do it actually is to do it while you are doing the work, and so it's the easiest way to do. So you have to just prepare yourself to say, oh, as I'm gathering this data, I take note of what I think is interesting to tell during this work. As I just did this session with people of this workshop, I just write down some notes about what happened, and why things went in this direction, or something like that. So at the end, you have like something to work on, not just telling the story that's on the hindsight you feel like is going in the right direction of the like you already knew that it will go like this. Like sometimes it's written almost like like this, like oh, from the beginning you already knew that everything would align itself in this direction, and it's like a bit easy.
Well, consider, some of this has to do with the transactional nature of most design projects. Number one, because you get hired to do something, and then the other thing is, this isn't just designers. Just the utter lack of humility that you tend to see is like, like Mark, you're talking about research, and the number of times I've seen designers get up and talk about their research and their expertise in research, and I'm like, do you know what, like, you took a course on on ethnography, and now you're like this incredible expert researcher. That's not to say people can't be good researchers, but it's just like this a real sense of not understanding the full depth of that. Just like systems thinkers, somehow people think, well, I can do a causal loop diagram, therefore I should be able to design a social system that's going to really work for a bunch of, it's incredible. And yet, I'm being a bit flippant, but I've seen that.
Yeah,
it's
me
shocking.
Too. Unfortunately,
often.
Me too. Yeah.
I saw something. Sorry, can I just say a quick story?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Very quick. During the holidays, I did some research, and I thought, right, what research has been done on systemic design? And of course, I Googled it, and a research paper came up. I thought, oh, let's have a read of this. And it was blatant. The guy stated the way that he did the research was he used a search engine and typed in systemic design. And he came to the conclusion that there is hardly any systemic design anywhere, because he didn't find anything. And I actually thought he was joking, but he wasn't. This was the whole premise of what he then wrote a paper about what he did find. But that kind of research, what's happened? What systemic design in reality is not called systemic design. It's called a load of different things. It's in different places, and no one actually calls it systemic design. That's the name we give it to in kind of the people that stand back and look at it. The people that do it don't call it systemic design. I've never called it that myself. I've called it other things. I'm now calling it that sometimes because people understand that more than what I was calling it before. But imagine that someone just used Google to decide that it wasn't actually happening very much.
Yeah, this is why I
Well,
hate those kind of. I usually don't like those kind of labels. It's like, and I do feel like it's misleading to use systemic design or design systems design, stuff like that, because it gives the sense that you are actually designing systems, which is to me like not the case. You don't design systems, you design for the systems that exist. You don't create one, and you just set rules and everything goes well. So it's just not like that.
But Kevin, what's interesting about that is that you end up seeing people who are doing systemic design because they're using systemic design methods as defined by themselves and a small group of their colleagues and stuff. And like they talk about the idea that all the different things that you need to do to design systems. I'm saying I agree with you 100%. It's shocking because I don't know. I think I might know that paper. I don't know, but it's fascinating how there's very little out there for people who say that this is the way to go. And I'm like, well, maybe. I mean, I don't have any inherent problems with a lot of the thinking behind the methods and the tools and the conceptions and perceptions and all that other stuff. But this idea that, well, this is like we're designing systems, and I, last time I checked, when you design something, you kind of got to make something.
Yeah.
Like you can't just do a hypothesis. There's a difference between that and speculative kind of things. But they don't determine it. It's fascinating.
Even speculative things, there's an artifact at the end of it.
Yeah.
So I think that some of this stuff falls short of even the speculative.
Yeah.
Which is it's really, I find it really interesting. I really like the notion of the term artifact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this thing that it's indeterminate in terms of the actual kind of thing that it is. An artifact could be a system, it could be a product, it could be a poster, it could be, and this notion that you are materializing this thing to have effect in the world, whether it's speculative or whether it's an actual thing, to me is the goal. The goal is the effect, right? The change that you want to achieve, the future that you want to achieve. And I think that to me is a really good acid test. If there's no artifact at the end of it, then it's pointless, question mark. Like, kind of like that's the thing. And therefore, you can bring a concept like thinking about the system in which this artifact is created to help you build a better artifact regardless of the type of artifact, right? That you apply that to it, or you can apply the concept of craft regardless of the type of artifact. These are all things that you can do that are kind of like artifact medium agnostic, but are concepts, the design concepts that you bring to bear on making that effect.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting, John, to your point about that study, I mean, I think that this is it's just about being honest. And I say honest, not necessarily that everybody's trying to lie about this, but I do think that there's sort of an honesty to say, for example, I did a study of looking at what would happen if you actually did a Google search of systemic design. What comes up and what does it look like? Now, that's a legitimate study. It might not be the most rigorous and all that other stuff, but it's a legitimate way to do it. Instead of saying this is what systemic design, this is the state of the art, going, well, it's a state of the Google, but it's not necessarily the state of the art. And like it might be, it could be, it totally could be, but I think that's the problem is there's this overreach to go, well, this is the way it is, instead of going, well, I just did this because I couldn't come up with anything else. And when you start most scientific fields, the studies are terrible and all that other stuff, but it's because you're still trying to figure out what the parameters are and what the basics of those artifacts are. And I think I find it just gets so frustrating because it just this overreach everywhere, and it's done, I think, in part. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure that all the reasons why, but
Yeah.
I have something, Kevin, for you.
Yeah.
Something I did over the holidays, got nothing to do with it. With this, I decided to take a watch, Swiss watch,
Okay.
and to completely dismantle it, clean it, oil it, and put it back.
Okay.
And it
Wow.
is working. It is working. So it's something I've wanted to do since I was little. And I know someone who kind of deals in watches, and I thought I'm just going to get some tools, and I did it. So that was one of the things that I did over the holidays. I think I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue doing it. I find it very relaxing and something that I can do in the evenings to stop my mind thinking about this stuff. And I thought you'd appreciate that, Kevin. Being Swiss.
Yeah, I'm not really Swiss. I'm French guy living in Switzerland, so yeah, of course, watch and Swiss, of course. I'm to be totally frank, I'm not so into watches, so I'm not maybe the best to.
No, you're not really Swiss.
No, I'm not really Swiss. I like chocolate. I like chocolate, and I work in a bank. That's already 2 of the 3. It's like
yeah.
banks,
exactly.
chocolate.
Bank. I thought you were
missing
working
the watches. Sorry. I'm not.
But do you have a dog with like a flask of, like booze like around its neck or something? I think there's more facets than just and plus there's the whole cheese facet. There's the mountain fat. There's many facets to this Swiss thing.
Well, so my dog is too small to have like this big thing because otherwise it's like just go on the floor and makes more noise than anything else. So
get one of those like the airplane. Get one of the airplane size bottles.
Yeah.
Can you yodel, Kevin?
Absolutely not. I won't even try. It will be, difficult for you.
Alphorn? You got to blow an Alphorn, baby.
So yeah, I need to drink some Swiss wine before yodeling because otherwise I'm hurting myself doing it. So
and other people probably.
And the other people, but when I'm drunk, I don't care about the others. So that's maybe the reason.
That is very French.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
more
in
French
between.
Than
Sorry.
Yes, you failed the test.
Yeah, I failed the test. Yeah. What do you think, Jonathan?
Oh God.
That's pretty funny. John, on your story, I had a friend of mine's his kid. So this guy's a little bit older than me. He was my friend's uncle, but we got to be kind of good friends. His kid, when he was 5 years old, he came home and the kid had taken apart the lawnmower at 5 years old. And the guy looked at him and he basically said, "You took it apart, you put it back together again." And the 5-year-old kid put the lawnmower back together again, and it worked.
Great.
5 years old.
Great.
And it turns out the kid was like a mechanical kind of genius, and he's an engineer now. The kid, and he went to university. He lives in the prairies in Canada. He went to university when he was 16 or 17. The kid was just amazing. But yeah, that was my buddy called me. He said my stupid kid took apart the lawnmower. I told him to put it back together again, and then I got a phone call like 5 hours later, and he said the lawnmower is back together and it works. I was like, wow. So
wow.
It's a smaller scale, but you can. That's quite a talent. You put that thing back together again.
But that's exactly it. It's the whole thing about pulling. And you realize that what's so impressive about that is that not just because it is impressive, but is that that's exactly it. Is the whole tearing things apart and putting things back together. And I mean, you see this even with like critique. People can critique, but it's like, yeah, but come up with something better.
Oh yeah.
Come up with an alternative. That kind of thing.
But I think this fits very well to, all these stories and how the design council handled all this putting back together and breaking it apart. And it's like, I think it's not just a work of trying to be innovative and re-actualize it in our context and see that, it's more colorful, it's got circles, and now it's actual, but actually is really understanding and try and actually to create a replica of that old system to see if you truly understand the underlying mechanism of it. And I think that's what we struggle, and a lot of designers struggle, because they want to build for the future. So how do you re-enable those old models? How do you know how to tackle them? Like the Swiss watch, you can't put it in a different way and expect it to work. It has to go in the same way. And this is, great design. If you want to like mutate it or reshape it, it might take an entirely different route. Or you might just repurpose it into an entirely different object. But you can't expect to call it the double diamond anymore and pass it on to the new generations as if it's the original. I think that's the loss of the depth of knowledge, and how we get lost and mistake beliefs for knowledge, or the methods for the purpose of our work.
Yeah.
I've started on the second watch, which is a more sophisticated watch. It's got a date on it, and it's a better quality. 2 days ago, I realized that I lost a spring which you can hardly see, which has caused me to pause. I lost it in the carpet, and you think, well, I look for it, I don't know where it is. So I have to now purchase part of a broken watch and try and find the.
What's the spring made? What's the spring made of?
It would be sprung steel.
Oh, get yourself a magnet. You could find it in the carpet with a magnet, hopefully.
The problem is you haven't seen my carpet. It's the carpet underneath where I did this. This is a design fault. The carpet underneath where I sat is made of little bubbles of wool, and it's like a rug. It's impossible to find anything. And when you search, you find all these things that, like, you ate 6 months ago, and it's in there. What I tried with the torch. What I'm now going to do is put a sheet across the table and me before I attempt the next phase. So, but I can purchase one. It's just a pain in the neck, because it's a well-known movement type. I can purchase a part for it.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe you tried on many watches before. That's the reason there's too many pieces on the floor.
I'm unfortunately backing up onto another call. Lovely to see you all. Happy New Year. Hope everybody stays healthy, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Good to see you all. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
Been fun. Please, Kevin, next time let's do a session on try and continue this, but try and identify everyone's design way, like John's Swiss watch. This is a design method, breaking it apart and put it back together. But I think there are others, for example, like puzzle makers. You start from that rubble of chaos and then you put them together. And I think there's so many more methods. So I'm curious which kind of fits everyone. If is there one that's
I have like something with arguments. I like to
So it's a design horoscope.
Yes.
Yeah, I personally I love to deconstruct arguments and see where people find support for their arguments in in literature and stuff like that. So I love to discuss about how do you construct a good argument, and how how people that claim to not use logic or reasoning to describe what they are doing are actually using it in an indirect way, and where they are taking the support for what they are saying, and how can you build like a stronger argument from there is something that I find interesting. So this is my thing outside of design and stuff like that. It's my little thing. Hence the critical thinking part of the of the name. it's coming from there. It's one of my, I don't know if it's a passion, but something like I like to do.
That's interesting. I think I'm the opposite. One of the things I did before, and I haven't finished it, I must get back to it, is I started a course on Theory U.
Yeah.
Which is a different, you're probably familiar with it, the name at least, if nothing else, the different ways of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different levels, because I want to move away, because I do work in the intuitive complex space, which is difficult to, when someone then says, where did you get that from? I said, I don't know. But linking that with the rational, linking that with different levels of cognition, because in the work I do, I have to help managers who believe that everything is logical and their organization works like a machine. I have to help them to think that they don't think logically at all, and that their organization doesn't work like a machine.
So
and that's kind of that's kind of the foundation of the work that I do with them. So having something a little bit more based on recognized concepts helps me. So although it's a little bit connected to work, it's also doing it because I enjoy that kind of exploration, which I think you've just, by you saying it, Kevin, that reminded me that I'm doing that as well, but in a different direction, perhaps.
Yeah, I do relate to what you are saying. So I find it really like close, you know, because I understand what you are trying to achieve with that. So I feel like I understand what you are trying to achieve with that. So yeah.
I like puzzles. I think I'm more of a letting myself explore things with not really knowing why, and then seeing how the pieces fit together. At some point, hopefully, I find a pattern. But I like to get into random things and see what this takes me until I exhaust this route, and then I go somewhere else. But I guess it's driven by curiosity. So if a topic, like I remember when I was reading the research on effectuation, I got so excited. So for a while, this is all I could think of, and nothing else, until I got tired of it, and then I moved to something else. But that's how I operate.
I find that when I try and just learn about something that there are many things I try and learn about that I find difficult to engage with, that other people absolutely love. And sometimes I force myself. So writing, I'm very poor at writing, but I have forced myself over the last 4 years, write a bit more. And I'm not great at it, but I dislike it less now. And I'm not a natural writer at all, but there are some things which I now know I just don't go down that route anymore, because it's just not me. And when I'm working with people in the work that I do, I have to recognize that they are the same. There are ways about them that they prefer that might be different to mine. So in my early days, I used to, I guess, force them down a particular route. And sometimes it would work and sometimes it didn't work. And sometimes they would turn almost violently against me. Not violent physical violence, but emotional violence. Behavioral violence. What I've learned is, and this is spiral dynamics, where there are different types of people and they learn in different ways. And I found that a very helpful way of understanding how and why we're all different. Not we're all different, but we all have differences, and where those differences are different and where those differences are similar. So, and that's helped me a lot in my work, I think.
Actually, I actually just read recently that this whole "we all learn differently" idea is being kind of debunked right now. There's kind of quite a lot of research showing that actually people learn in quite similar ways. I have no idea, but I just have read about this lately.
I've always found a lot of disagreement about these topics for the last few decades, and I'm not sure why. I think it's to do with social and human issues. As soon as you get into social issues, no one really agrees very much. And I'm with you, Jonathan. I tend not to write too much, read too much about the research. I tend to, and I don't know if this is a strength or a failing, I tend to fit those things that I see in my work. I tend to connect with those. So I connect with spiral dynamics because it answers a question that I have. Whether it's true or not, I'm actually not bothered. But what it does is it helps me to understand. Maybe in 10 years' time, I'll read something and I go, oh, that actually wasn't true. But I think the intention of that research and that work is pretty close. And there are people that disagree with it, and I read why they disagree with it. As a particular person who I'm not going to mention, and he doesn't have any valid reason that he disagrees with it. He just doesn't like it, therefore he creates reasons why he disagrees with it. So quite fascinating. But anyway, it's theory is one of the areas that I don't enjoy, and that's one of the reasons why, especially in my work, there is no true theory about the work that I do. It is people coming up with their own ideas. And that bit I like. I like the idea of ideas, and I like the idea of concepts. I don't like the idea of someone going yes or no in the work I do, because I find that the people that are most successful in this have never read much theory, maybe in some cases no theory. They've practiced and they've learned through practice. And I find that particularly the approach that I'm most comfortable with.
Yeah, I do feel like it's important to know that some models exist. Well, at the same time, I'm personally I would say like I'm a skeptic, so I personally won't go in the your direction, John, where you say, oh, I find it useful in my work, and therefore even if it's not true, I don't care. I would say I prefer to not have an explanation, not knowing that if it's any explanation proposed to me is true or not, than having an explanation that I don't know if its explanatory power is actually, sound. So it's where I draw my personal limits. But I don't feel like it changed. I mean, except if you are like in a more research setup, like a more academic research setup, it doesn't really actually matters when you are doing the work, because in the end it's where you see value and in the type of outcomes that you can bring in your work, that when you see the outcomes because of your work, then you did something that works. At some point it's actually hard without all the necessary instruments to know exactly what causes those changes, to know if it's entirely done to it's entirely due to your doings or not. So it's you have to to be you have to know where's the limit of your personal knowledge and those kind of things. So but philosophically, this is where I draw my my limit, my personal limit.
Yeah, I mean, I work sometimes with other people who do my work, and they do what I do differently. I wouldn't do what they do, and they wouldn't do what I do, but they come up with an outcome which is as acceptable and as valid. And I don't criticize them because it's not right or wrong. It's an outcome. My outcomes would be different. The organization involved is just as happy in that sense, and it works for them. The success or whatever they get from it is the same. And I find that quite fascinating. I haven't really got to the bottom of it. I haven't really understood that, but I find that a lot of this work is is due to personal engagement with the other person. So it's almost like if the person engages with you well, it's much more than liking. You just not just do they like you? Do they relate to you? Do they connect? And some people I don't connect with, and if I don't connect with them, I go, oh, and I have to then work out by what method can I still help them, even though we don't connect. In some cases, I will walk away because we disconnect completely. But there are people that I then learn to connect with in that sense. So weird. I haven't got to the bottom of it, and I don't know if I ever will. I just know I've had to work around it.
Yeah.
Well, I would say in my experience, for example, I have a kind of a boring position on this, which is I guess you need a bit of both, you know. And but I
You are
think
more
the more
Swiss than me, Jonathan.
But I think in what sense one can specify it. I mean, in my experience, I mean, I play some music, and what I always found with music is this kind of times when you want to practice theory and practice actually things that are not necessarily fun or creative, but and that brings some kinds of benefits. And there's other times when you want to, you know, let yourself go and play more intuitively. And I think these two things have different kinds of benefits, and you kind of jump from one to the other. You know, the problem is if you never try and understand what you're doing, you never do any theory, you never try and analyze and use your analytical mind, then you never kind of you'll get stuck in your patterns and you redo the same things over and over again, and you never go out of your way of thinking. But by the same token, if you always do analytical stuff, then you can never get the value of experience and of just doing and getting that idiosyncrasy of like your uniqueness of what you are, you know. So I think both are kind of have their own benefits.
We don't hear you anymore. Jen.
Me? Well, I've stopped talking. Yeah, John, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Is that better?
Yes. Yeah, now it's better.
Okay, sorry. I completely agree, Jonathan. It's not one or the other, and I think that's part of the problem is reductionism of analyzing this. We sometimes get too stuck into one or the other, and the reality of my work is I do both at the same time, just like I'm sure you guys do. But yeah, I find every single job I do is different. Although some of it is identical in what I'm doing, I learn so much from it, and it's different, and it's new, and it's creative, and I think that's the bit that I really enjoy about this kind of work. It's which I guess is what you all do as well as designers. It's the same, isn't it? Every design is both similar and different.
Yeah.
I used to think that working in a transactional organization would be very similar, but the reality is you work with people as well, I guess. Is that right, Kevin?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you work a lot with people, individuals and groups, and very different for each different person and different group?
Not necessarily always different, but I would say the context might change, although it's the same people, sometimes the same teams, because well, it's a bank, so they like to, you know, isolate functional part of their business, and so the IT side is also following those kind of isolation of functional part for the business. So I would say it's rarely the case that for what they call a platform within the IT side. So the platform is serving like an entire pool of the business side. Even though I'm transversal throughout the entire platform, there's not so much people involved in the end inside it. So I'm working with usually with the same people, although I changed like recently. I work for another platform now. So I changed the team and the people I work with. And so usually what is changing is the type of things that people try to achieve within the boundary that the companies created. And this is where it's interesting, is that the context changes, and therefore the means to understand what they are trying to do change as well. So we don't, even though we are using some kind of we have a toolkit of methods and tools that we are using. In the end, it feels like it's different as well. And yeah, and sometimes it's really exciting because you realize that you will have to cross the boundaries that have been arbitrarily defined. And this is where it's interesting, and because you have to you have to convince a lot of people that it's worth the time and money to cross those boundaries. And yeah, it's interesting to see how political and how human it is, more than functional and pragmatic. So yeah.
Well, guys, it was nice chatting with you, and it was nice to catch up. Really
Yeah.
interesting conversation, as always. Stimulating for the first half, making me feel like I know nothing about design and I'm never gonna learn anything. And then I'll try to pick myself together. So I hope maybe we'll get to answer John's questions about what will this community and these discussions evolve into. And I really liked what Mark said about making it a bit more radical. Let's just test out ideas, not just moderate designers. We're like, no, we're not tearing the world apart. But maybe that's what we need, a bit of an exercise to step out of our own comfort zones, not to always hold the high ground of I know things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to our next one. And see you soon, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I need to leave soon too. I just realized it's 7:20, so it's getting late on this side.
Yeah.
Are you planning to continue with the bi-weeklies like we had it in the past, or you want to change?
Yes. No, it will stay. So yeah, so now we have two sessions planned. So this one, which is the original one, so it won't change. So it's every 2 weeks, and on Thursday we'll have the first session in French, because I had some people asking for that as well. So we'll try. We'll see if there's enough people to join on a bi-weekly schedule. We'll see. And yeah, I think it's good to have those sessions because there's no actual formalities there, so we can discuss about whatever we want. And outside of it, of those sessions, we surely need to plan for sessions that are dedicated to creating the space for this kind of radical ideas that we were discussing.
I think it will be really fun. So maybe next time in 2 weeks, if we can brainstorm and think about what this would look like. I think it's really exciting if we can do something a bit radical.
Yeah, I agree.
On what question? Sorry.
No, well, I don't know the question yet, but there was this idea that we should experiment and use this community to test more radical ideas.
Okay.
So I thought that because I'm not sure if you were here when John asked the question, how are we going to organize the community this year? But we never gotten to answer that. So maybe next time, I think at the beginning we can start with that and then brainstorm a little what we want to test and experiment. But
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see where we go with that. I think it's really interesting to start this discussion and see what kind of things we can come up with.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe we can also select topics that we find that some people know about, some others want to learn more about. We can have a session on a Tuesday afternoon, evening that's about a topic, and someone starts off what they know about it, and others chip in or question or whatever.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah.
I can do one on repairing watches.
No, but I'd love to learn about your research. I mean, I don't know the history about the double diamond, so I'm really curious now to download the book and I'll read about it. But it would be nice to actually have a session, I think, specifically to that. I think it's super powerful.
Sure.
Those simplification, as I understood, of the original context. Now that times have changed and a lot of water had run from this period to where we are today and the challenges that we face, how necessary and yet still relevant the original work is. It's really quite inspirational.
Yeah, the original work is, I find, out of all the books I've read, this is one of the most important for me.
Yeah, so thanks, John. I'm downloading it, so I'm really curious. I'll get to it.
Can I just say that I don't normally send people links to download a PDF of a book. If you want to, I don't know if it's possible to buy it new, and if you do, the prices are eye-watering.
Which book is it?
I put it in the chat. It was a book, but Banathi, who is the original creator of the Double Diamond. I do want to buy the original. I'm waiting for it to come up on eBay as a second-hand version because it's just eye-wateringly expensive. But if you do read it and think it's worthwhile, I'm sure you would naturally buy the book.
Yeah. And this article, I mean, I find it funny that there's such a trend now talking about systemic design. That'd just be my comment, that suddenly in the past 2 years, it seems everyone is talking about this now.
Yeah,
very
I think,
interesting thing.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people about that, and I think that the design, there's no such thing as a design community. It's too diverse, but certain elements of the design community, I think, have been frustrated at their lack of ability to engage more with organizations. They seem to remain at a distance, in particular service design, where they come up with solutions, they present it in nice PowerPoint presentations or even in theater presentations to the client. The client will either like it or not like it. It's kind of a mechanical, in some cases superficial way of designing, and they're becoming more and more aware of that, and they're actually saying, this is only part of the service. What about other parts of the service that we don't look at yet? So systemic design has been around for a long time, and I think it's just been, people are now talking about it and everyone's going, oh, I didn't know about systemic design, what is it? And I'm finding that that's suddenly it's suddenly a lot of people are interested in it. I think that's just a natural phenomenon of service design trying to find its route forward, because at the moment it seems to be a little bit incestuous. It's getting more and more about technology, when the reality is that's okay, it's fine to do that, but it also has to go out in other directions, and I think it's finding that very difficult to do.
Yeah. So I did some recordings during my holidays now about video. I reviewed videos about the future of UX design because people are releasing videos about what is the trend for 2022 or stuff like that, which actually is never the case. They are never talking about 2022. They are always talking like about 5 to 10 years time scales, which is if you think about it, is not the good way to approach like good predictions. But anyway, and it's so focused on technology. It's I have the same issue, but I do feel like the trend around systemic design and systems thinking and stuff like that. When you because I don't know so much about the service design community, to be honest. I know some people. I'm following like the service design network and stuff like that. But if you look like at least in the European side of the community, there are some people like that just frustrated about the way companies work with design, and there are some people that are like more in the more in the analysis part of what is a good process for including all the elements that we should include now, like carbon neutral thing and recycling and stuff like that. So there's many little trends everywhere that converges into this type of label that seems to cover all the narratives that are a bit different when you look at them in details. Like there's this discussion around sustainability and circular design and stuff like that, and there's this discussion about thinking in the as a whole, and there's this discussion about and you take all of those discussions and they seems to converge around those kind of labels that covered like coherently wrap up the narratives in one word that's apparently everyone can understand without understanding it really. It's like this kind of words. So yeah, to me it's all of those that are included in, and the fact that the design council decided to title net zero and stuff like that, it shows where they come from as the process they used to reach the systemic design side they are talking about. To me, it's telling about where they came from to reach that point.
Yeah, that's
this
a
is my
good
analysis.
it's a good observation. Yeah. No, and I mean, I can definitely see that if you're a designer and suddenly it's in the air, and often designers are I think, quite people who are generally more to the left, I would say, and who are quite aware of these issues of climate change and want to do something about it, then it seems like an obvious kind of place to look in systems, the systems thinking area. But it's true that service designers have been talking about this for 50 years. I don't know. I mean, for a really long time. I mean, it's been around, but it is funny that it's just popping up all over the place now. I just find it quite interesting that really everyone's talking about this, which is good, I guess. I mean,
yeah.
But there's as well. I do feel like they are specialized. The one that we are seeing more now, they are specialized in I would say in the digital service type of discussion, which is not exactly the same as the traditional, more traditional service design culture. I do feel it's my feeling, but I'm not an expert because I don't know so many service designers. I don't know.
I find what I find really fascinating, on top of all what you've said, is that there seems to be a trend across business. It's not just in design. It's not just in people that do change. It's across business. And there are business leaders now going, hang on, the way that we do our business now isn't working. 5 years ago, you wouldn't have heard that. Firstly, they wouldn't have admitted, and secondly, you wouldn't have heard it. And now it's not embarrassing to say that, and many people are saying that. There's the growth of corporate rebels, which is a group which is highlighting new ways of designing and managing, and some of those are now being seen as models, as maybe the way forward. And those use systemic design in terms of what you were talking about, Kevin. They use the principles. This is why you're absolutely. I completely agree, Kevin. The principles are what is important, not the bloody models or whatever. They're the ones that use those principles. So if you look around, there are now some of the mainstream consultancies who are traditionally keeping up the traditional ways of managing a business, the command and control ways, are now starting to develop groups that can help organizations do exactly the opposite of what they've been doing. So some of the old crusty bearded systems thinkers are now getting inundated. They are far busier today than they were even a few years ago, because people are just asking them, hey, we want to know more about systems thinking. And these guys are going, what? Like, this hasn't happened before. It's like from everywhere, from governments, from the private sector, in particular the private sector. So I think there's something happening. There's something happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people talking bullshit also. I mean, that's part of the issue, I find.
There certainly is, and I see that as a normal part of a new growth. There are people that are well respected that talk about bullshit, and there are people that talk bullshit because it's new and they try and jump on the bandwagon. And when I was a consultant for the first time, I did exactly the same. I remember reading stuff, and I'll put that on my website. I can do this now and I can do that. I have no bloody idea what it was that I was putting up there, apart from the fact I read a book. Luckily, that was a long time ago.
Well, if you read a book, you're already ahead of 90% of people.
But so I certainly expect that to happen. But there are a lot of people who've been waiting for this time. People like me who suddenly the time has arrived where my kind of work is being looked at not as being very weird, but as being what some people want now. So in that sense, I find it fantastic.
Yeah, that's true. I'm wondering how it will look like when we will reach the commoditization part of this trend, because when you see what design thinking is now compared to what it was, many multiple versions of what it was. I'm just wondering. I have no, prediction and, like a sad realization about commoditization of practices. But I'm really wondering what it will look like, and actually what it will leave the place for. What will be the next thing after that? Because like system thinking and all those kind of discussions, it's not new. It's like really old. I don't feel like there's something new that happened in between that we, like in the fringe type of discussion somewhere, and that will, replace and go in a trend as well. And I don't see that yet. So I'm interested in that kind of thing as well. It would be interesting to see. But I'm sure, to me, we are far from the commoditization. It's still like a trend. It's new, and many people want to jump in, surely. So but we see that people are just trying, that looking at the field where they actually, what they can do, what they cannot do, actually what that, and people are trying things. We're still in the really beginning of it. So Jonathan? Right.
No, I mean, I was, because I'm wondering, I'm a bit more, I mean, maybe pessimistic is a bit too strong, but I have trouble believing that all these people are jumping into systems design because they want to develop a circular economy. You know,
No, they don't.
this
Especially
is why.
agencies. They don't
So I
want
wonder
to.
where this actually comes from, because there's a desire to learn about this, but it's, I don't get the feeling. I mean, I think you're right. You're totally right that the kind of a big chunk of what pushed this into the limelight is talking about, well, you know, the circular economy, the you know, climate change, all this, definitely systems, ecosystems. I think also just it's in the air because, you know, we have networks of digital networks, all this. It's all kind of, you know, in this systems kind of space. But I don't know if
Thanks, John.
yeah.
Bye.
Bye, John.
Have a good.
Anyway, yeah, don't really have anything interesting to say, but it's just I wonder if really the underlying motive is to change the world and make it, you know, a more sustainable thing. I'm a bit pessimistic about that myself.
Yeah, well, I do feel like there's people trying things that are interesting in the change that they can bring, actually. So I do feel like there's part of the changes that happen that are in this realm, and obviously, like the most majority of the trend is about people that either don't know exactly what to do with it, and agencies that see an opportunity to sell something to clients. And I don't know if it's necessarily bad or a good thing, but yeah, it's a reality. It doesn't mean that an agency cannot help a company do more circular stuff without being a circular agency. I don't know how it's possible, by the way, but anyway, yeah, I don't see necessarily contradictions yet. But when things will clarify, when the trends will be commoditization, and that we will lose all the messy part and the unclear part of the trends to reach like a point of, you know, simplifications. Yeah, maybe what will stay is what will remain of all of that will be some of the, you know, of this game of selling services to companies, and then that's it. I don't know if I'm pessimistic as you are, Jonathan, slightly pessimistic. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm still looking for the signals. Yeah, it's clear. It's
I
clear
mean,
that
it's
it's getting
interesting because
clearer now.
it's still, I mean, it's not a very well defined thing, as you said. It's
No.
not really commoditized yet. But people are trying to own it. That's what it kind of disturbs me a bit. You know, that some people are really trying to own the space. It's like you know, it's a bit like we discovered America and everyone's trying to plant their flag on some bit
It's
of
like
land. You know,
it's like
this is my thing.
It's like the
Hey guys,
metaverse.
I need to leave you as well. See you next
Yeah,
time.
thank you,
Bye.
Kazi.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it's like exactly the discussion about metaverse and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, well, it was really nice seeing you all. Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.
And happy New Year.
Yes. Bonne année.
Ciao, bonne année.
Ciao.